It's no accident that sounds like you're leveling up in a video game. 48% of 18 to 29-year-olds have an online dating profile.
Make them work for it.
45% of people say they're more frustrated with this form of dating than hopeful.
There are so many people you can connect with.
Should I swipe right?
Swipe wrong. Swipe wrong. Setting the record straight on dating apps. Everyday people telling everyday stories of the swipe right world with your host, Chaos.
Well, I know he had a good time.
So I won't even start it out the same way. I don't know what else to do. I mean, good morning. Welcome to the Swipe Wrong podcast. I won't do the whole, you guys know it. If you've been listening to the show enough, you know how it normally starts. I'll just give you a break. So welcome to the Swipe Wrong podcast. I am Chaos. Welcome to the number one podcast among guys who are completely and totally confused, which is all men, but you grew up, the pulling hair was bad, and you got in your 20s, and all of a sudden pulling hair was good, and you're just like, what do I do? I don't know what to do here. Spanking's bad, then I don't know, then it's good. We're just confused. I don't know. It's like the first person that heard a parrot talk. That person is not okay at all. So anyway, how are you doing today? Hopefully you're doing fantastic. I know I'm doing amazing. So I think this is continuing the saga of checking in on people who we had spoken with when we first started the show. This is like episode 11. Anyway, I guess let me do the housekeeping. Let me walk it back and do the housekeeping. First of all, you can catch us at swipewrongpod@gmail.com if you want to share your story. 317-426-6616 and like, follow, subscribe, share, send it out to friends. Let them know that it's out there, that there's an outlet for them to share their stories and catch everything else that's going on. Okay, there it is. There's the housekeeping done. And moving on forward. So this girl is so cool. Like I had a conversation with I don't even know, like I'm calling Mike because that's his name, but he's been on about 4 or 5 different episodes. He's my go-to when I need another guy on the show. It's him. You've heard him quite a few times. Ass is not on the menu was one of them. He's been a part of a threesome episode. I think actually 2 threesome episodes, and the live stream that we did, but he's not the one that's a part of this, but he got this young lady on to come onto the show, and we become great friends. And she, him and I were talking how cool it is to just tie us a bind. You know, I wouldn't have known this person without the show, and she's become a really good friend. So it's cool. Anyway, whatever. Not that you all want to hear, but it's cool. It's like a community that we've all become part of. Some people who have been on the show is like, hey, that story's familiar to mine. Can I reach out and talk to them? And I'll go like, well, let me find out. And then text exchanges happen, and all of a sudden friendships are born. So it's pretty cool because that's what this is. This is a way to support each other. Anyway, she's been on the show, but I would say, I think 3 times now, 3, and then this will be her 4th. And she's great. So she was the first Polygamist episode, and so same as everything else, just wanted to catch up, see what she's doing, see if she's in a relationship, see how dating went, see how everything's been going. So this is one that was pretty well requested, and we'll see what we can do to get you all caught up. Welcome to, I guess I should say, the Catching Up with the Polygamist Part 1.
Disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions or any entities they represent. This podcast is about dating experiences. It is not to say one dating app is better or worse than another.
I think this is like the 5th time you've been on, but I mean, like we've recorded, I think 3 or 4 times, but I know there's like the first time we talked though, I think we turned it into like 3 different episodes.
I was just going to say, I think, there were some snippets that got into other little episodes.
It was probably about a month ago. I don't know why. I was scrolling through some of the shows. I'm like, they're all the same. I forget what that one was. And then I played. I'm like, oh yeah, that's when you said all guys' dicks are pretty much the same. Oh yeah. It's like, oh, that shit made me laugh when I went back and listened to it, because like there's so many guys that have the ego that's just out there where I'm this and I'm that. And like, I know this one girl, you're all the same, and I believe her more than I do you.
Well, and it's funny, somebody the other day, we were talking about like what makes your sex, like if you're in a relationship or whatever with somebody, what makes your sex life good? You know, and this guy was like immediately like, oh, it's because he has a huge, does he have a huge cock? Like, is that what it is? And I was like, why do you always think that? Like,
Yeah.
it's like such a small part of the whole picture, you know? Again, I go back to the extremes. Like if you have a super huge dick or a really small dick, there's probably going to be some issues, but the majority of you are in the middle, and that's only part of it.
So it's not, does he have a great personality, or does he make you laugh?
Take care of you in bed? Is he open to doing fun things? Like, you know, can you even just have a conversation about what you like or don't like, or give feedback about that feels great and don't ever do that again? Like,
so like, how does that work? So like, real quick, like, I know we'll get into other stuff here, but like, if you're sitting there and you've had sex, but you like the guy and you're like, I need to figure out how to give this dude feedback. Is that like, you talk about stress in your life? Is that hard to approach?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Well, I mean, yes and no. I think that it can be more challenging with certain people, right? But to me, that's kind of a red flag, or maybe a yellow flag. Like
that you can't have the conversation.
Right. If I don't feel like I mean, obviously you can't have nobody's gonna have that conversation, like at least a very frank conversation.
Right.
You know, early on.
Right.
Like early on, your feedback methods are going to be much more subtle, right?
Right.
Like, trying to like just move your hand over here.
Yeah. Oh, wait, don't spank me so hard. Yeah, I get it.
Now, you know. Like,
yeah. Quit tapping my ass. Spank my ass. I get it. I understand. I see where you're going here. Yeah. Totally. But like at the same time, like I'm sure like the first couple times you're like, all right, let's just see if this is how it's really done, or if like it was just a one-time thing too, right?
Right. But and I think early on it's also kind of like figuring each other out, right?
Oh,
like,
totally.
What is do they like this? Do they like that? You know, there's a lot of that going on. But like eventually when you're in a relationship with somebody, you have to be able to have an open conversation to say, you know, I'm into this, I don't like that, I want to try this, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard. And I think that's why a lot of relationships struggle, because people don't have those conversations.
Yeah, and that's too bad too, because it can open up so much more fun, possibly too. If you're like, all right, well, let's give that a shot. I mean, all right, pegging is off the books, but you know, that's a different conversation too. I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah, and I don't know, at least like, you know, when I came back into the dating world, the number of people who talked about a failure in their relationships because of sex, at least the men that say that, right, you know, was really astounding to me. I was like, is it really that bad? But and then I'm like, well, at a minimum, the communication is that bad.
Okay.
Whether or not like that was actually officially the problem, the communication around it was the problem.
And I could also see people saying that, like a guy especially, if sex wasn't good and it failed my relationship, and then just hoping somebody say, well, let's see if we can't figure that out. You know, like let me jump in, you know, naked, and we'll see if we can't show you what good sex is like. Yeah. Could also be like a subliminal ploy for that too.
Oh yeah. I think there's definitely some of that going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. I might say the pasta wasn't really good and that fucking ruined it. And like, all right, I want some good pasta. All right, let's go. I mean, so how has it's been a year or like 6 months since we talked about your dating life. So what's happening?
So I've been in a relationship.
What? That's impossible. Right? How does that even happen?
I don't know. It's totally weird.
Was that an in the wild or on the app meet?
No, that wasn't on the app.
Yeah.
But you know, it was funny because it was right after the whole oh my gosh, what's our name for
Polygamist? Oh yeah.
The Polygamist.
Yeah. Our buddy.
It was, right after the Polygamist. And I was kind of in this mindset of like, okay, I'm like going through a situation, right? And I'm probably not in the greatest like mind space to like be in a relationship with somebody or date somebody seriously, because I was still processing that whole scenario.
Right.
But I was also in this, which I had never done before, but I was also, I think because of what was just going on, like a lot of my girlfriends were super busy at the time. And I happened to have a few free weekends without the kids. And all of this had happened. And I was like, I need to be busy. Like I need to be out around people, distracted, whatever, while I'm kind of trying to process this. And sometimes when I go through something, I would say usually actually more like I did not date for, I think like 9 months after my divorce. Like I was not one of those people that like jumped into the dating world, got on the apps, did the whole thing. I took a lot of time before I got back out there, so to speak.
Right.
And when I've gone through other situations, that's kind of how I've been. But this time I was like the opposite. And I was like, nope, most of dating is casual. Yeah. So I'm just going to like entertain myself right now. So I'm going to go out on some dates. It's not going to be serious. Because I'm not going to find anything serious anyways, because when does that ever happen? And I'm just going to have a good time, So I got back on the apps. I went out on a few dates. That's how I met him. Yeah. And, but it was like from the get-go, I was like, this is a good human. Like, I can tell this is a good human. You know what I mean?
He's good to his core. Yeah.
He's right. Exactly.
It's good to his core.
So yeah, but I kind of struggled because I was like, well, we hit it off. We're having fun. He's a good person. He's doing all the right things. Like, but of course I was a little gun shy, given that I thought the polygamist was a good person.
To his core.
Good to his core.
Right.
So I was like, not trusting myself either.
Sure.
But I did, I just kind of found myself all of a sudden with a good person that was like, he was the one kind of, I don't want to say pushing me, but he was like, when are you going to get off the apps?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was like, all right, I found this dude that's cool, but I'm going to keep kind of dating, kind of not dating, kind of whatever, because I don't know, like you said, you don't trust yourself. So you're like, I don't know what I want to do. I have this new toy. I don't know if I want to play with it yet. Is that the kind of, let me go see what other toys are going on. Let me make sure I really like this toy. And if it's like, I don't want to build a bay, I don't want to do that. So like,
yeah. Well, and also I was a little bit like, I didn't want it to be like a rebound situation. I didn't want to be like inadvertently leading him down a road and then, me realizing that I was just, in this rebound place. Right. Because like I said, I didn't really go back on the apps at that point with any intention of looking for something serious.
Okay.
Which is not my usual MO, but at the time I was like, you know what? I just want something to do and be distracted with for a little bit while I process this whole situation.
For sure.
And that's what like 90% of the guys on apps are looking for. I was like, this will be fine, So then of course I meet the one guy who's like on an app that isn't looking for something casual.
No, it's like, I am going to put this girl on lockdown, however possible. Yeah. So how long you guys been in a relationship together?
So I met him. Actually, this is kind of a funny story because the night of our first date was the night that we recorded the Better Off Babes episode for the First Date podcast.
Sure.
So I recorded that podcast at like whatever 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever it was. And then I had to like sort of leave all that.
Yeah. Right.
Go on a date.
Man, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So that was kind of like, that was a little bit, chaotic.
Yeah.
So I met him in early November, like went on our first date in early November. And then I think I finally like went off the apps at the end of January.
Oh shit! And you're like, well, 'tis the season. Jesus,
Yeah.
let me see what mistletoe's out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I mean, like that's actually with all the shit that you went through, because we, if you did the thirsty and then went out with them, so we talked after that while you guys had already kind of gone out. And I guess
we were still kind of talking, and
while you're still sorting it out. So I don't know. That's cool. So now you've been in this relationship for, damn, you're talking almost 10 months. Look at that big old smile. Holy cow.
I'm like, it sounds crazy.
So all the bullshit you went through, like, I think this is a part that gets missed. Like, now that you're here, it's all worth it, right?
To go through all the bullshit?
All the bullshit, right? Is it all worth it? I guess let me rephrase. Is it all worth it? I mean,
well, I think, like the girls and I talk about this all the time. You take something away from every relationship. You learn something, right? It was funny, like just the other day, I don't remember what came up, but I was thinking about the whole situation with the polygamist, and I was like, God, looking at it now, there were so many signs, that I just did not probably want to see at the time, but that put me in that situation now, I would never repeat those mistakes again.
Sure. It's a unique thing though, too, though. Like you can always see it happening to somebody else, and we don't always see it when it's happening to us. Like you just, I don't know. I think it's human nature. It's not, they don't know this person the way you know the person or whatever. There's just not objective. So I think in that aspect, like hopefully you give yourself a break on that. Now you wouldn't let it happen again because you're like, I know what this means.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think there's, and one of the girls, Heather with the podcast, she talks a lot about how she'll say, I've learned more in the last 3 years of my, since my divorce or going through my divorce than I learned in like the, 35 years before that or whatever. And I think there's truth to that. I think going through a divorce, she made a joke the other day, like, how did she say it? Something about like everybody, and she's like, I don't really mean it, but like you should get divorced, you should get married and get divorced so that then the next marriage like is really good. Like, you learn so much going through it.
Yeah, it's like if anybody ever, I feel bad for the dude that ever tells Maggie, hey, I'm just going to have a digital detox this weekend. I'm like, oh, dude. You're going to get your throat cut now. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. And I guess you as well. I mean, you can be like, oh, I know what this means. I know. All right. Take care, bro. Take care.
See you around.
Well, I'm just happy to hear that you're happy because like the fucking journey can suck. But I mean, well, so again, all worth it?
Dating worth it? Like,
well, dating, all the shit you went through to get to where you're at.
Well, I mean, I think the problem with that statement is like, who's to say that in 5 months this relationship won't be over?
All right, fair. That's
know what I mean? So it's like,
stop it with your logic.
I mean, am I happy? Am I having a great time? Like, all of those things right now? Absolutely. But we also all know that even when you're in a great relationship, it can be a ton of work. It can be really hard, and I feel like I'm also kind of at that stage where like, and we all just know this, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but like you get to that, I'll say 6 to 12 month range. That's when sort of the sparkle is starting to wear off a little bit, right? In any person, like you're starting to get to know them. You're starting to see, other sides of them that you haven't seen or they haven't shown you or whatever. And not that that's, necessarily a bad thing, but I think there's caution in that, right? It's like, okay, well, let's see if this is really, are we both really happy and making each other happy? That starts to come around about now.
Yep.
Like,
so funny you say that. I talked to a guy yesterday who was on that summit thing that I did. He was one of the coaches on the summit. And yesterday he was talking about, like there's like 5 phases. The first 3 months is the perfect phase where everybody's happy, sex is great, nobody's tripping.
Fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that is the imperfect phase for like the next 3 months where he gave an example, like this one girl called him and was freaking out. It's like, my boyfriend, he he belched the alphabet. And he's like, we both started laughing. Like, he's like, now he's showing you who he is. He's, he's letting his guard down. And then it comes all the way up to, there's like more phases after that. And, how, each one.
Oh, I want to hear more about his phases.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'll be on the show.
Okay. I know, because I agree with him. And I think we probably all have had like similar conversations. Like,
yeah, totally. I mean, it ends up like the last phase ends up being, like for a guy, especially, it's like, do I make her happy? Like, am I the one that's going to make her happy? And,
why do you guys feel like that's their responsibility?
Well, because I think it's a part of, he's got some interesting takes. I don't agree with them all, but he's got some interesting takes. Like he thinks relationships also are, like, men are hunters, women are gatherers, and it all comes back to that form of science. So he thinks relationships, like in a relationship, it's not always 50-50. I can't say I agree with it, but his perspective is interesting. So I think that part, that hunting part, is the make her happy part in his perspective. Like, yeah, so he's got some like, and it's funny, like he wants to be as volatile as possible, but it's also because he says it's science that he's got it backed by, and history and all that. So, but yeah, like to me, like I think relationships are 100 and 100, not 50-50. Like you got to give 100 to each part, because if you don't, like, I understand other stuff comes in, but you got to give as much as you can. And I would much rather have somebody who's has a foundation of their own happiness, and we make each other, happy along the way. Just not necessarily an accessory or a need, but a want and a desire that turns into, the companionship. But, I'm also single, so who the fuck knows? So, got to go through that first divorce, right?
Right. Yeah. There you go.
They're going through that and then seeing what the hell's next. But yeah, I have him, and then I have a couple others coming on. And I'll have all their perspectives, which, I don't know. I'm just happy you're happy. How's that?
I appreciate that.
No problem. That's it, girl. That's it. I just want to check in with you and make sure that the dating world didn't beat you, that you beat the dating world.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that, it's funny. I used to think that, like, I think a lot of people that are divorced, like we've had this conversation, especially when you have kids, it's like, oh, will I ever get married again? Or, oh, will I ever live with somebody again? And it's interesting to me because of my divorced friends, I'm the furthest out now. Like I've been divorced.
Oh, if you're divorced. Okay.
And there are things, it does change over time. And like, I used to think, oh yeah, I'd live with somebody again. I'd move in with somebody again, if the situation was right. And now I'm like,
yeah.
I've lived by myself for so long that I'm like, I don't know if I could, like, I don't know if I want to give up my drawer space. And like,
yeah, it's so weird how that works out too. Like I was asked something similar, like, would I get married again? And I was like, yeah, I would. Would I give up my own living space again? Like I would probably move in with somebody, but I would rent the house that I own. Like I would rent, like I wouldn't sell it. I would rent it. So that way, if something happened, like I know I've got a place to go back to or something, because everything ends. Like nothing's forever,
Well, I mean, and there'd be people that would argue with you on that to say like, but that means you're going into the whole situation with one foot out the door.
Or I'm protecting myself, right? Like everybody's got a fucking savings account. So like, or not everybody, but most people have a savings account in case the shit hits the fan. All right. Well, here's the savings account. All right. And if that's the case and it works out good, I would rather put away extra money every month and fall into a great retirement. And all of a sudden I have this extra money as opposed to planning on the retirement being the thing. So,
No, I get it. I just that's what I mean. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. I think
Heather has a friend who is divorced with 2 kids and in a relationship. And I don't know if it's happened yet, but they are either planning to or have gotten married, and they're living in 2 separate homes. And that's the plan.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I don't know. I think for me, it's like you said, a lot of it is financial. Like, well, I have my 2 kids.
Sure.
I'm not willing to risk losing anything financially that I've, been spent the last 5 years building for them.
Think of how hard that was. Like when all of a sudden you're in this duel and you got to start from like ground zero and build to where you are. Nobody wants to go through that again.
No. Well, and it's, this is always an interesting one too. And I've had this conversation with a lot of my married friends or coupled friends, is how you split finances or how you do finances with your partner. It's fascinating to me, the different ways that people do this. Like, really? Oh my gosh, yes. Like I have one friend who, they both have great jobs. They're married. And he, like, his salary pays for, I know, the mortgage, and I can't, like, something else big. Maybe it's, health insurance or I don't know, whatever. Okay. Her salary, like, goes to some other big, like, house, life expense and all of their vacations.
Oh, that's cool. That's interesting.
And that's how they've split it up. And I'm like, okay. And I'm sure that's kind of the generalization. I'm sure there's some more nuances, like, groceries or whatever. But, and then, I have other friends where it's all in one pot, that I'll it's all divided. I have friends that, so it's just like, it's so interesting, how people decide to, like, split their expenses.
Yeah. Yeah. Like in my head, like when and if I am, like, it's going to be, probably about 8 different bank accounts or something. Yes. Like there'll be a community for household stuff. There might be a community for vacation stuff, and then everything else can stay separate. That was the hardest thing, was all the untangling after divorce. I mean, we were merged everywhere, credit cards, all that stuff, bank accounts. Luckily it was amicable and all was good. But when it's ugly, that's some shit.
Yes. And that's the thing, is even when it's amicable, it's still challenging.
Yeah. It's daunting.
Yeah. Yes. And it's still like nobody comes out with, sort of exactly what they put in. No. There's always somebody that takes on more. Always. Yes. And it's usually whoever, if it's amicable, then it's probably the person that's making more and all that, just want to split and just want to move on. That's what happened in my case. So, but that's it. So, it's hard. I mean, that's the lesson you learn. Maybe it's like Heather was saying, if I had, what I know afterwards versus what I know before. Right. Yeah. Well, and I think it's different when you have kids and don't have kids.
Sure. Oh God. Yes.
Or like if you, had a family business or a personal business or, whatever, that's going to throw a whole different element into things.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I don't know.
Well, all I know is you're amazing. So I'm just glad that
I want to know about your dating life.
Mine?
Yeah.
So despite
you've kind of had some fun stories recently.
I don't date much. I'll be honest with you. I don't date much. What I run into is people thinking I'm going to put them on the podcast. Like I stopped messing around with the apps really all that much because people think I'm going to put them on the show, and they're like, something's up. I don't think I want to. And it's, you and I've talked about this before, and I think you're the one that said, well, don't be stupid. Don't be a shitty date.
Right. You won't be on my podcast.
Right. And I've used that. So, like I have, a couple of people that I hang out with, I guess. And there's
casually.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get popcorn together and butter it.
Or each other.
Yeah, either one. But there's a lot of transparency, I guess.
Well, and that's, what? I mean, and then that's fine. Like if everybody's transparent and on the same page, then
there's no polygamy.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. Like eventually they'll be the one, but I don't know. Well, I got so much going on in my head. I don't know.
Do you feel like do people know about the podcast because you tell them?
Yeah, I tell them. Yeah, I totally. Like I'll tell them, or actually I have it as a part of I think my profiles, because it's also marketing. So for people who don't swipe, or I don't swipe on.
Have it on your profile.
Maybe not. Like I didn't for a while, and then
that might be your problem.
Well, if that's my only problem, we're in great shape. But I'm also a very big personality guy, and word on the street is I'm kind of funny too. So, like talking to people in person is like never really an issue. Now, people responding in person is an whole different issue. So, I mean, it's also a good opener. Hey, by the way, check out this show. Oh, you do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, that gets better response in person than it does on the apps. I don't know.
Yeah. And there's so much that's lost on the apps
Much.
Yeah.
So much.
Our friend Jenny from the Polygamist, we've been joking, like, I don't know, maybe the last like year or so, she's met like 4 men in the wild.
Yeah.
Like, Jenny, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing this? I don't understand. It's crazy.
Nice.
I know. I'm like, I can't like wrap my head around it.
It really is a thing that people are getting so tired of the apps that they're just like people say, well, where do I meet people? Well, you walk up to somebody and see what happens,
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about disappointment. Shit. I mean, whatever. I mean, that's all part of it. I'll make you laugh either way without pulling down my pants. So.
And I'll have a story to tell. So that's all that really matters.
Absolutely. There's this one time at band camp. So.
So there weren't any fun stories from your retreat that you could share?
Oh no, there was no, like, it was all guys hanging out. Yeah, it was nothing, like there was no trying to hook up or anything like that. Okay. I mean, I think one of our guys got a hooker, but that's just what he does on every trip, and especially in Tahoe where it's legal, whereas Vegas it's not. So, but no one was chasing anything except for just hanging out with each other. So maybe 10 years ago we did. Besides, there's not nearly the talent, we'll say, in Tahoe than there is. Like maybe during ski season there is, but not during this time of year. So it wasn't the same. The same. No one got my number, that's for sure. Thank you for being along for the ride of the Swipe Wrong podcast. Remember, everyday people telling everyday stories of the swipe right world. The show is produced by Jay Pelham. He is the host of Pelham Place. So make sure to check that out. Also, I am Chaos, the host of Chaotic Commentary. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, tell a friend about the pod. And if you have something that you want to share, please, we want to hear from everybody and get everybody's stories as much as we possibly can. Email us at swipewrongpod@gmail.com. Give us a call, leave us a voicemail. Let us know if it's okay to call you back. 317-426-6616. Thanks for being along for the ride. And next week, the saga continues.